Welcome in to another episode of the Barnes on Bama podcast. I'm your host, Owen Barnes, and we have a couple of games to discuss. I'm recording this after Alabama's lost 99-94 to Florida that happened in Coleman Coliseum on Wednesday evening. Sorry if this is a little bit shorter of an episode. I am having to try to record this at night. I have some family things I need to attend to, so I'm trying to get this out in advance of the Auburn game with plenty of time for everyone to watch that is interested. So if you are interested in this, please subscribe to the channel. I would appreciate it. I know there's a lot of new people that watch these, and a huge percentage of the people watching the podcast and stuff are not subscribed. So if you are interested in anything Alabama sports related, obviously we cover Alabama basketball, Alabama football. We probably will cover some baseball stuff. The baseball team is off to a super hot start. So we're going to cover, all things that happen on the capstones. If you are interested, please subscribe to the channel. I would appreciate it. But like I said, we're going to discuss this Florida game that happened on senior night. Then we're going to talk about the Auburn game, what happened in that first matchup and what Alabama needs to fix for this second matchup. And then we'll get out of here. So as I mentioned, I'm recording this immediately following Alabama's loss to Florida that happened in Coleman Coliseum on Wednesday night. Simply put, Alabama just got bullied. Florida was the better team on the glass. They were the better team down low. And I think a lot of it had to do with just a physicality, and Alabama did not match the physicality that Florida put on the floor. Something that Alabama has done a pretty good job this year, against a team like Houston, a team like Texas A&M, honestly, a team like Tennessee. Alabama did a pretty good job matching the physicality and playing up to that level. And in this game, they just didn't. Florida out-rebounds Alabama by 15. They've only been out-rebounded in 4 games this season. It was Illinois by 7, Mizzou by 1, LSU by 2, and then this Florida game by 15. So by far the worst rebounding performance of the season for Alabama. And that really was a huge difference in this game. One of your best bigs that was playing and playing really well was Aiden Sherrill. He gets injured during Florida's run, gets hit in the head. Not heard the specifics on what that's going to come out to be, but he has a pretty good game. He was my player to watch. He has 10 points, hits a couple of threes, really was playing well down low, and goes out, and it's a really an issue for the rest of the game. In the first half, Alabama was already getting punked on the glass. They honestly did a little better in the second half, but they were just a major detriment on the glass, and that was a huge difference in this game, right? That is the place where Florida won this game. Alabama was able to score at times. At times, the offense felt a little stagnant. Alabama gets 30 points from Mark Sears, gets 19 from LeBaron Philon. Has just 6 turnovers, probably a season high. I would have to look back to confirm, has 5 steals and really causes Florida to commit 10 turnovers on their own, right? So from a standpoint of what had been causing us issues for huge parts of the season, the turnovers and at times your lack of defense, for stretches of this game, the defense was okay. Alabama gives up just 41 in the first half. Really probably should have been closer to that 36, 37 point. But Alabama does end up giving up 41 at the half. And in the second half, Florida and their bigs just bullied our drop coverage. You had really good guards and bigs that were handling themselves at will. Florida ended up getting probably 4 or 5 breakaway alley-oop dunks where, they were just playing to the defense that Alabama was playing, and we just didn't get out of it. Whether it be Cliff, whether it be Grant, whether it be Jaron, they would just miss their guy as they would lose their guy, and then the guy would come in for an easy dunk. I do not think the refs are the difference in this game. I think that it was actually called fairly evenly on both sides of the ball, but that's to say the whistle was not blown a ton. There was just 38 fouls in this game, and for an SEC game, that's actually pretty low. The situation was a lot of physicality was let play during this game, and at times Alabama has had issues letting that physicality go, right? Sometimes you get in an SEC game and it turns into a free throw battle. And then sometimes you get into an SEC game and it's like this, or like that Houston game that we had in the MTE, where there's a lot of physicality and it's a situation where the refs are just letting them play. And Alabama, by and large, has not done as good of a job later in the season when refs just let them play. This is good news because a lot of the refs that you see in, I know everyone's going to come in the comments, there's no SEC refs, but there are refs that do a lot of SEC games and some refs that we don't see super often. The good thing when you get to the March Madness into the NCAA tournament, it's pretty rare that you're going to have your refs that you see every night in, night out. So that does sometimes change things around a little bit for how games are called in the NCAA tournament, whereas you're accustomed to one set of refs or, the kind of general consensus on how games are called and what type of physicality is allowed in the SEC versus what type of physicality is allowed in this game. They allowed this game to be very physical. And to Florida's credit, they, were really, really dominant with that physicality. Alabama still just never played great through the physicality. At times, you saw Alabama was able to get some things going, but just overall, Alabama really never felt comfortable. To me, it really never felt like the offense got going at the level that it could have gone. You saw a lot more mid-ranges taken in this game. You saw a lot more, twos that were just missed because of how Alabama was having to put them up. Mo D goes 0 for 4 from the field, or from 2. Mark Sears goes 8 of 14. Grant goes 4 of 9. That becomes part of a problem that your guys just aren't finishing as well around the rim. Part of that's through physicality. Part of that's through, whatever it may be. And that was an issue in this game. Another major issue in this game was free throws. Grant Nelson goes 2 of 5 at the free throw line. Jared Stevenson goes 1 of 2. Muhammad Diabate goes 1 of 4. Those numbers just need to be better. Alabama shoots just 68% from the free throw line, and when you're playing in a game that is, similar to an Elite Eight, Final Four style game, you have to just play better. And Alabama didn't, right? Florida looked like the team that we thought they were. They looked like the team that I thought was capable of coming into this game. I thought that Alabama's, better defense and how they've been doing on turnovers was going to be sufficient to win this game. And at times, I thought Alabama was playing well enough to win this game. There was a stretch, however, where Florida goes on a 13-3 run, and that pretty much closed the game. I still think Nate needs to learn how to call timeouts. He had some timeouts that he used later on in the game, and it helped lengthen the game from when we had a 10-point game and we brought it down to 5, which has the final score being what it is. But there is a situation where if Nate calls a timeout in the middle of their run after a dunk, I think he could potentially settle the guys and not let it balloon up to the 13, 14-point lead that happened. Personally, that's something that I still want to see out of Nate. I still want to see him take some extra timeouts during that and understand the sense of urgency that, hey, I understand you're at home. I understand you think the crowd can help get you back into it, but Florida has all the momentum. You need to stop it. And Nate just didn't, right? That's something that I definitely want to see out of Nate Oates moving forward. I thought that, like I said, I think that they've done a good job at times this season cleaning up things that have been problems for us. The turnovers have been much better. I thought that overall the shots that Alabama was getting were not awful. I think that the rotations have been a little better. I think that the assignments, this game, barring this game with the back cuts for the dunks, by and large, I think the assignments have been pretty decent. We just really need to see the timeouts cleaned up from a coaching standpoint. We need to see the rebounding cleaned up, absolutely, from a full team standpoint. And then keep seeing the guarding that we saw in that first half. In the second half, like I said, Florida was taking advantage of the drop coverage, which they were seeing, and you just had some elite guards and bigs that were just bullying us on both sides of the, on that side of the floor. But I do think that overall, Alabama played much better defense. Phylon still looks incredible on that defensive end. And overall, I think you're really getting some solid plays out of certain guys. Are you still having some struggles by Grant Nelson? Are you still having a few struggles by Cliff Amore on the defensive end? Tonight was honestly one of his better offensive games. Goes 5 of 5 from the free throw line. 3 of 3 from the field. Did have a huge block, but there were also a few other moments that it felt like he kind of got lost and either gave up a dunk or something like that, right? So you really need to see some extra stuff out of your bigs, in my opinion. That's where Alabama has struggled the most. which does make a little sense, but it is a situation where Florida, credit to them. They hit the shots when it mattered. They had some free throw shooters that were not great free throw shooters, but down the stretch, they hit big free throws. They shoot 72% as a team, whereas Alabama shoots just 68% as a team. They hit 4 more free throws and win the game by 5, right? Seems to be the difference in this game. And credit to them, right? Condon, a guy who's not a great free throw shooter, shot well. Aberdeen, not a great free throw shooter, shot well. Chinyalu, goes 1 of 2. So they're guys that are not the best free throw shooters, did well, and it was the difference in the game, right? Credit to them. This is a really, really good Florida team. This is a Florida team that beat Auburn in Auburn Arena. I would expect this Florida team to go very far in the NCAA tournament. They have the depth on both the front and back court, so I do expect them to make a Elite Eight style, a Final Four style run. This team is absolutely that good and is a team that nobody wants to see come March. So that's what I have to say about the game, right? Credit to the seniors, credit to Mark Sears, credit to, what they were able to do. A little too late, right, is what it felt like. Alabama got down 13, and, in our mind, it really needed to be cut to 5 or 6 at the 4-minute mark, and you didn't get it cut to 5 until, 50 seconds left. And it just was too little too late. Alabama loses the game, and credit to Florida. They beat us on our own floor and did it on the glass where they absolutely dominated this game. So we will move to the Auburn game, and then we'll get out of here. So as I said, we're gonna cover the Alabama-Auburn game. It's gonna be happening on Saturday at around 1:30. The game has actually changed from 3 to 1:30. So Saturday, just after lunch, Alabama will head to Auburn Arena to take on Auburn. Auburn, the number 1 team in the country. Both teams now coming off a loss. Auburn to Texas A&M on the road, Alabama at home to Florida. Both teams lost in ways where they just got punked on the rebounds. Auburn's major issue was they just couldn't keep Texas A&M off the glass. Alabama's main issue in that game was they could not keep Florida off the glass. So this is a game which I expect that both teams will be stressing the importance of the rebound. I think both teams will be stressing the importance of not letting the other team get momentum, especially from Alabama's standpoint. If Alabama wants to beat Auburn in Auburn, you're going to have to make sure they do not get a run going and get the crowd into it. The bigger the run, the bigger they get their crowd into it, the better it is, right? The teams that have had success in Auburn Stadium, and Florida being one of the main ones, were able to kind of take the crowd out of it early. And that allowed them to do well in that stadium. It is not an easy place to play. I do not expect it to be an easy place to play. Honestly, if Alabama does not play their A game, I would expect Auburn to win this game. I know I'm saying the prediction a little early, but, if Alabama does not play its A game, Auburn will win this game. The home court advantage and what they have going for them is something that I fully expect them to take advantage of and be able to play off of that atmosphere. But let's talk about what happened in the first game, and then, it should give us some ideas as to what Alabama could do to be successful in this game. First things first, Alabama has to get out to some of the shooters. They let Miles Kelly get started early from 3. They let Denver Jones get started early from 3. Chaney Johnson, Chad Baker-Mazara, all these guys shot over 50%. Jani Broome hits two 3-pointers, right? At times, there were guys that Alabama was just sagging off of and letting them take the shot. In Auburn's arena, I don't know if that's the best idea, because if they hit that shot, it's going to get the crowd into it. I understand the idea of sagging off of shooters that are not as good, and there are some which, of course, it makes sense, but I do think that is something that Alabama's going to have to do very carefully, because, again, if that shot is made in the arena, it's something that will get their crowd into it, and it's something that I don't know if that's something you can fully afford. A place where Alabama was super successful in the first game was on the offensive rebounds. Alabama doubled them up on the offensive rebounds, 14-7. It's a place where Alabama will have to be elite again. Grant Nelson was huge in the first game. Cliff O'More was huge in the first game. You got to have big games out of both of those guys. When you're going against Jani Broome and Dylan Cardwell, you have to have big games out of your front court. If Aiden Sherrill is able to play post his injury, which you saw in the little banged up that he got in this game. I don't know the extent of it, but if he's able to play, you're going to want him to play. He did not play in the first matchup. I think that you could really use him in this next matchup. I think he could honestly be a little bit of an X factor down low since you did not see him in that first matchup. He's somebody that I think that at times Alabama could play and give you a little bit something extra down low, especially if Grant or Cliff are not playing at the level that they did in that first game. They both were awesome on the rebounds in the first game, but we don't know what we will see in this game. The other thing is Alabama, obviously just needs to make shots. In the first game, Alabama had some shots and just missed them. Alabama shot 5 of 26 from 3. Mark Sears goes 2 of 11. Aiden Holloway goes 1 of 4. Jaron Stevenson 1 of 3. Chris Youngblood 1 of 3. Everyone else went 0 of 1. And it was a huge issue in the game, right? Auburn does not give up a ton of assists. Matter of fact, Alabama had just 9 to Auburn's 13. But a lot of that had to do with the fact that Alabama just missed shots. And shots that Alabama does not always miss, right? That is something that Alabama will have to take advantage of in this game. If Auburn gives you a shot, you have to make it, right? Similar to in the Florida game where Alabama, had missed a few shots that were open, you just can't miss an open shot against Auburn. This is the number 1 team in the country for a reason. If you're missing open shots, you're going to lose the game. It's that simple, right? Another thing that I think that Alabama needs to pay attention to is in the first game, Auburn did a great job, dictating what they wanted to do with the ball. And what I mean by that is Auburn was able to get into all their sets, and it didn't really feel like Alabama did a lot on the defensive end to stop Auburn from doing what they wanted to do, right? It felt like when Alabama hit the threes to take the lead, or to tie the game, Alabama was really just beating missed shots with better offense. Alabama at times, and even in the first half of the Florida game, in the Tennessee game, Alabama at times has been able to sit down and defend. It's something that you're going to have to see in this game against Auburn if you want to win this game. Alabama is going to have to sit down and defend. Auburn is going to have their sets. They're going to, run them as best they can, and you're going to have to sit down and defend, not give a cheap bailout foul, and sit down and defend and make them beat you with a good shot. Because at times, guys like Tahad Pettiford or Chad Baker-Mazara are willing to put up some shots that are not super advised if it gets either late in the shot clock or they're feeling themselves. And so because of that, if you can, I don't want to say bait them into a bad shot, but, sometimes they're willing to take an ill-advised shot because, they're feeling it or whatever. And I think that's what you're trying to do, right? You saw it some in the Texas A&M game against Auburn where Tahad Pettiford was awesome. He had a lot of big threes, but there were also some threes that he just kind of chunked up, and even the announcers were like, hey, that's not a great shot. Chad Baker-Mazara, same way. Not a great shot, right? That's something that Alabama, I think, if they play the defense that they're capable of, is possible to do. If we play the defense that we played in the first game against Auburn, it's not going to happen, right? But with all of this being said, you still have to do what you did in game 1. You have to rebound like you did in game 1 when you out-rebounded them on both ends of the floor. You have to not turn the ball over like you did in game 1. I thought that Auburn game was really your first time that you showed that you had the ability to play a game against a tough opponent without turning over the basketball. Again, those are the kind of things that Alabama is going to have to do to win this game. There's some injury questions, right? What does Denver Jones look like? He did not play in the Texas A&M game. What does a guy like Aiden Sherrill, again, we mentioned Aiden Sherrill's name. What does he look like? It's also a coming home party of sorts for Aiden Holloway, right? A guy that played for Auburn last season, and I'm sure it's going to be a lot of emotions, right? I think he matches up well against Auburn just because of the speed at which he has and the multi-guard lineups that Auburn likes to run. So I think he's going to get a lot of play time, especially if he's playing well. He played okay in the first game, but just wasn't hitting shots and turned over the ball a few times. So if he can not turn over the basketball and play within himself, I think that he's going to get some run in this game. And then I think the big one is the fact that Mark Sears is on a bit of a heater right now. He's had 5 games with over 20 points against top 25 opponents. And in that first game, he just was not himself. He had a couple of turnovers, had just 1 rebound, 2 of 11 from 3. Was not great. And I think that those are some things which I would expect for Alabama to, be able to try to get him going. This is another situation where Alabama changed up the starting lineup after that game and put LeBaron Philon in the starting lineup. I think that's also a difference maker because you have the LeBaron Philon running the point lineup where Mark Sears is getting more efficient shots, where you have the defender in LeBaron Philon to be able to go up against some of their lead guards, which he's done an incredible job of here recently. You still get the shot making from a guy like Chris Youngblood, and then when you bring Jaren in off the bench, you have Jaren shot making with Aiden Holloway and with Mark Sears, right? Like I think the lineup that you have with LeBaron Philon being in the starting lineup is just a much better lineup for what Alabama's trying to do. And again, that's not something that happened in the first game, but it's something that I would fully expect to happen in this one. I don't expect Nate to change that around at all. Obviously, that starting lineup has been working well for starts, so I would expect it to stay, right? So those are the things you have to look at. I do think that this is going to be a tough game. I've said it, and I've said it, and I've said it. I think Alabama has to do what they did well in the first game and clean up the things they didn't. And honestly, Alabama is going to have to play a B+ or better game and hope that Auburn doesn't play their A game, right? If Auburn plays their A game, Alabama needs an A to A+ game to win this game, right? These are 2 of the best teams in the country. Alabama's obviously lost some, but don't get me wrong, Alabama is still an elite team. They have had some injuries. They have had some setbacks, but I still firmly believe that Alabama can play with anybody in the country. However, this Auburn team at times can be on another level, right? And if Alabama turns over the basketball, or if Alabama allows Auburn to just dominate them on the glass, or if Alabama allows Auburn to, hit a big shot and get the crowd into it, followed up by a steal or something, right? Keep the crowd, keep the energy of Auburn's team because they are a very hot-headed team. Guys like Chad Baker-Mazara, Janai Broome, these are pretty hot-headed guys that play with a lot of emotion. If you get to where they're playing, loose and free and they're, up, this is a team that is a very good front runner, right? If they're in the lead, they play super confident, and it's a team that can beat you and run you absolutely out of the gym. So Alabama, I think honestly is going to have to play a very good game to keep it close. And if Alabama plays poorly and Auburn plays well, Auburn will run you out of the gym. So, do I think Alabama can win this game? Yes. However, I would give it probably 75-25. Auburn wins this game. I am going to predict that Auburn wins the game. Not that I think that Alabama can't win it, because I do think Alabama is capable. I think that there are things on the film that happened in the first game which Alabama can clean up. And I think that there are things where Nate Oates, his second time playing a team, often is much better at, cleaning up some of those things. You saw it last season with like the Clemson game and some others. I think that Nate does a pretty good job cleaning up in the second game. I think that there were also some moments in that first game where Alabama, showed that they were capable of winning the game and just missed some shots. I don't think that Alabama's going to miss all of those shots in Auburn Arena. I don't know what it is, but for whatever reason, Alabama has done fairly well shooting on the road. I think that they're going to be up for the big game. We have some guys that, play for the big moment, and I think that they're going to be ready for this game. But I do think that Auburn is probably going to win this game. I'm going to predict a slightly lower scoring game than the first one. I'm going to have this at an 88-84 Auburn victory. Actually, let's go 88-83. I do think that, like I said, I think that Auburn wins, but I do think that Alabama obviously has the ability. Would it shock me if Alabama wins this game? Not at all. If Alabama, does what I've said, if they play the way they played in the first game from a rebounding and lack of turnovers perspective and just hit some of the open shots that they missed in the first game, they'll win the game. However, when you see what Auburn is coming off of a loss, when you see that Alabama put out a terrible rebounding performance, that Alabama at times in this stretch has just not looked great, it does give me some cause for concern. So I am going to predict Auburn wins the game. Again, I would not be shocked if Alabama does win it, but I think my prediction is going to be that Auburn wins it. And if you are interested, I will break down this game. I will record it on Sunday. It'll come out Sunday evening. If you are interested in seeing that, I also will break down what the SEC tournament looks like and what Alabama's potential road is going to look like for the SEC tournament, as well as give my prediction for who I think the SEC tournament champion will be. So please subscribe to the channel if you're interested in that. That's going to come out on Sunday evening. Thank you so much, everyone, for watching. I do appreciate all the support on this, and I will catch you in the next episode. Peace.